Rockfin takes forever. Any day now, Rockfin, waiting on you. Great.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. It has been a while since we've been live on a Sunday, but the Sunday show is back, ladies and gentlemen. I do have a special guest, so I don't want to keep them waiting. Really quickly, I do want to tell you what we are covering today. Interesting stories, ladies and gentlemen. The theme of tonight's show is Here's What Really Happened. Crazy stories, guys. Tonight, we are going to discuss Biden's message to Kamala Harris leaked. Yikes. That is connected to the poll question. Don't forget to answer that poll, ladies and gentlemen. More information is coming out about that transition of power there. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss ICE detains German national, and this went horribly wrong here at Logan Airport in Boston. We'll get into that story. We're also discussing Trump strikes Yemen. It looks like things are escalating again in the Middle East. And we are also discussing, of course, our guest that's coming on is the former Bernie Sanders outreach director. And you'll see there's a picture of Chuck Schumer there behind him. He has quite a bit to say, so we do not want to keep him waiting. Let's go ahead and bring him in. So our special guest tonight is Marcus Farrell. He is the former outreach director for Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign. Let's go ahead and bring him in. What's going on, Marcus?
Hey, Sabrina, how you doing? Thank you for having me on your show. And thanks to all the viewers for watching your show. Your show is pretty dope.
And thank you so much for coming on. There's a lot that has been happening. Obviously, I know you've been paying attention to what's going on with the Democratic Party in particular. You were a part of the Bernie 2016 campaign, and a lot of times people talk about the 2020 campaign because I think it had more commercial attention. But the 2016 campaign, in my opinion, was still very successful. And we saw what happened there at the DNC at the convention where there were states that Bernie Sanders definitely won, and they handed them over to, of course, Hillary Clinton. So I think we all remember that. I want to hear about some of the experience that you had during that time. And is there anything that you look back on from the 2016 campaign that you feel maybe that 2020 campaign was missing?
I think both. First off, it was an amazing experience. I was Bernie's 5th, 6th, or 7th employee, right? And his headquarters was in Burlington, Vermont at that time. And it was the first time in my life where a white person walked up to me and said, "Let me touch your hair." So that's how that's how many white black folks were up there on that campaign. It was an amazing experience. I got there and pretty much made my own title, right? Because it was so unorganized when I got there in 2015 that I said, well, you know, the math ain't mathing. We're going to have to figure out what we're going to do with black people because I think they're important in Democratic primaries. So I had to argue foot and nail to actually like create and try to establish a black outreach program for the Bernie Sanders 2016 campaign. And I mean, listen, it was a beautiful thing watching an old white guy from Burlington, Vermont, from Vermont, be able to run for president and get the momentum he had. When I started, we didn't have that kind of momentum. But I was there throughout the swing and the turn where Bernie Sanders became nationalized, recognized Bernie Sanders, right? So that was the positive, right? And being able to see people have something to believe in for the first time in my life, a massive amount of young people who are now in their 30s and going into their 40s. But back then, it was just a massive amount of movement folks that wanted to actually see a change. The things that I didn't like were like, it was very insulated, right? It was basically 4 white guys who made all the decisions, just like white men would make decisions when it comes down to like, they were really, really, really showing their uber Caucasian side when it comes down to like decisions that were being made, right? One example is there was a Beautiful America commercial that everybody remembers where they had, I guess, Paul Simon or somebody singing this America song, and it was all of Iowa. And I said, hey guys, we need a commercial in South Carolina. And I said, and it better not be that commercial. And what they decided to do was take one white person out and put a black face in and run the same commercial. And I was like, we got enough money to get some Marvin Gaye around here or something. So, I mean, I think the problems was, of course, like the black turnout, but there also was a lot that was going against Bernie. He had the Hillary Clinton machine was against him in South Carolina. You got to understand that at that time, the Clinton Foundation was buying churches new roofs and people had 20, 30 year history. And also there was a thing about not believing the Clinton campaign did an amazing job of making black folks think that it was impossible to pay for the things that Bernie was presenting. And it was a very establishment neoliberal bullshit trick to actually get to suppress the black folk and also and tie in the blackness of the first quote unquote black president of Bill Clinton. But it was a fun campaign. It's just, there wasn't really an openness at the top to do as much as we could possibly do to get the black vote, which was the most important vote in that primary.
Yeah, I saw some similarities with 2020. I was laughing about the Vermont comment because I live in Massachusetts and I go to Vermont at least once a year, usually during the summer, and so I totally know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I used to live in Roxbury, by the way.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
okay.
I managed the mayor's race in Boston a couple of years ago. I was in the primary where Marty Walsh ended up winning the whole thing. But yeah, I lived in Roxbury during that time period.
Interesting. Okay, so you're familiar with how politics is here. Very well familiar. Yeah, so it's I totally understand that. And that was one of the concerns I had during the 2020 presidential campaign as well. I felt like Bernie should have really dived in a lot harder about his experience during civil rights, marching with civil rights activists. I feel like he really should have dove like into that. But I guess his message was, let's just include everybody. And if we focus on one group, then that's going to make other people feel excluded. However, I will say from my experience talking to Black voters, I was able to convince my parents to vote for Bernie Sanders, but I was not able to convince other older Black voters to vote for him. They just were not convinced that he was really all in for the Black community. Him being from Vermont didn't help. That was another thing that I heard from people. Even though the policies that he was running on would greatly benefit Black Americans, there was also the issue of reparations that was brought up. And I know you wrote about that as well, that like why some of the Black voters were turned off from Bernie.
Listen, it was a pivotal moment in 2016. So first off, let me be very clear. And I don't have beef with these guys anymore, but Jeff Weaver tried to blackball me because I was fighting so hard for Black issues and publicly saying things like, I have no earthly idea why Bernie Sanders does not support reparations. There was a moment where he was headed to South Carolina, and I said, if the reparation question comes up, you either support reparations or you stay quiet. I like to point this out to people when it comes down to Bernie at that time period, because since then he has come out in favor of reparations, but there was a pivotal moment where he should have done it when people were paying attention, and he didn't. And I just want to point this out to people. Reparations right now is polling at the same place that Medicare for All was polling before Bernie Sanders won. I'm going to repeat that. Reparations right now is polling at the same exact number that Medicare for All was polling at before Bernie Sanders ran. If we had a Bernie Sanders that was doing all these things, right, saying all these things, healthcare for all, we're going to turn these post offices into banks, like some of these amazingly beautiful policies, Medicare for all, right? Peace in the Middle East and peace across the world, right? If he had been audacious enough, and also there's something that my podcast made on Clickbaity Political Thirst Trap says a lot. Mayor Mondale Robinson, he typically says that Bernie's message was really adapted Jesse Jackson message from 88 and 84. People don't understand that. So Bernie didn't just create that message. That was Jesse Jackson's message. But the one thing that Bernie forgot to mention was reparations for Black people, which was in Jesse Jackson's platform, right? Now, if Bernie, and we created the HBCU tour for him, right? So I invented the HBCU tour. I literally said, Bernie, we're going to get you across Black campuses because these old white people, these old Black people, they ain't feeling you like that. So maybe we can gain momentum with the younger Black folks who are new voters who want to hear something. And he didn't necessarily adopt that platform of supporting reparations. All I'm going to say is the same way that he popularized free college, the same way he popularized like the living wage conversation, the same way he popularized Medicare for all. If he had mentioned reparations, it would have been polling up there high right now itself. It was a keen opportunity for Bernie to use his leftist platform and normalize the conversation around reparations. Listen, me and Bernie got into arguments. I got into arguments with so many people. That's why I wasn't on 2020, because they all thought I was problematic because I literally was fighting like tooth and nail. And listen, I feel the same way about Latinx issues. I feel the same way about just poverty across the board, right? But it's my job to make sure that the math maths. If you want to win primary, you got to get Black voters. I don't care what you think, right? I don't care where you are. If you want to win a Democratic primary, you have to win South Carolina. You have to show up well in Georgia. And imagine the corner that he would have put Hillary Clinton in. Imagine the corner he would have put Joe Biden in 2020. Imagine the corner he would have put them in with Black voters if he's out here with his platform screaming reparations when the other, like Hillary Clinton couldn't say anything about a what?
Yeah. No, I totally hear you. I'm just nodding my head because these are all things that a lot of us were saying, like that weren't a part of the campaign, but these are things that we were trying trying to make very clear during that point in time, I used to live in South Carolina. I graduated from the University of South Carolina. And I said, even in 2020, I said, he just won Nevada, he won New Hampshire. He's going to lose in South Carolina because I know how the electorate is there. It's one of the oldest electorates. A lot of Black people just really not, like I said, they're not feeling, him that way. But one of the things that was interesting, and Brianna Joy Gray just wrote an article recently in Current Affairs, and she was talking about what happened to her after, the Bernie campaign ended in 2020. She was told by several commentators and other DC alike that she would never get a job in DC again, that she would never work in that town again, because not just because she worked with Bernie's campaign, but also because she would not support Joe Biden, like afterwards, when she was asked about that. So they made it very clear to her that her career will be done. However, Simone Sanders, who was a part of the Bernie 2016 campaign, had no problem getting another job. In fact, she went on to work for the Biden campaign. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, Simone sold us out. It is what it is, right? Like, you don't go from being a spokesperson for the most progressive presidential candidate in recent history to working for the most establishment person without having given something up. I don't care. I don't care what anyone says, and everybody's afraid to say it, right? Because Simone has power now. I don't, because Simone already tried. Simone was a part of the group that tried to cancel me in the first place, right? It's an interesting thought process because you can't stop me. If you're looking at me and you're watching me right now, you can't stop me. Anyway, I'm sorry. It's an interesting thought process how Black folks who work for Bernie, we're still all kind of proud of Bernie, but it's also like, damn, Bernie, why won't you help us out? Why won't you protect us, right? Like, why won't you go out of your way? Because there's so many stories. I mean, I'm talking about so many stories of the Black folks who worked for the Bernie Sanders campaign being ostracized by the establishment Democrats because how dare you go against our person that's going to lose eventually? And then there's also the conversation about, well, when the Our Revolution start and when the other organizations start and when you need a job and when you need this, that, and the other, like, you are getting blackballed from like two different separate ends. Listen, I had somebody tell me that I not only was on the Democratic, because the DNC had a list of contractors that you are not allowed to work with if you were. I was on that list, right? I was probably top of the list. But then I also have the people who I work with on the Bernie campaign. Not all of them. There's some people I love to this day, white, Black, green, Haitian, whatever, right? Like, there's so many people that I love to this day that I still work with, and I'm still employed, right? I'm more successful now than I was then. But when it comes down to it, I was told, hey, you know what? There's some people that want to make sure that you never work in this town again. So Brianna, she's not the only one that it got hit with. I have a lot of mentees and people who worked for me in 2016 that had a hard time just getting local jobs in politics and also just opportunities. And why does this happen? Well, it happens because Black folks who speak the truth on the left are the realest of all of them. And I don't mean that by saying I'm harder or I'm better. What I mean by that is you're working for Bernie Sanders. That means you are working for somebody who wants to fundamentally see an economic change in America for the normal person. And then you're coming from that from a Black aspect. It takes it another level.
And that brings us forward to what is happening right now. And I wanted to bring up the history because obviously a lot of people are upset with Chuck Schumer and the other 9 Democrats that voted to support the GOP funding bill. Right now, even Charlemagne the God is saying that Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries should step down. So it's interesting. That's coming from him. That's one of the statements there. But you mentioned something on Twitter. You were talking about what people need to understand about Chuck Schumer, like just how powerful he is. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Listen, guys, people who are watching this show, it's more than just the Senate. It's more than just the U.S. Senate. It's more than just Congress. Wealthy donors who give millions, if not billions of dollars to the Democratic Party have key people that they ask for advice when it comes down to funding candidates and funding issues across America. And Chuck Schumer is right up there in the top 3 in America when it comes down to what Chuck says goes. So when you wonder why you have a primary, let's say we have a primary and it's me, it's Sabrina, the progressive, and Marcus, the neoliberal, want everything the same as dude, right? And I say, hey, you know what? I want to make sure that we have sensible issues and make sure that we just keep the status quo. And Sabrina says, nah, man, I want to go to DC and I want to fight for Medicare for all. Chuck Schumer is going to get wind of this, and Chuck Schumer is going to cut me the check that ends Sabrina and her campaign by me being able to outspend her, put more commercials on, and hire more people to knock on doors with my lame ass message. Chuck Schumer, he gets to pick and choose where a lot of money goes. So think about that with the mentality of Chuck Schumer conceding to Democrats. And I mean, these guys are softer than a wet paper bag, man. They're lame. And we have to get to a place where like they need to get replaced. Sabrina, on my channel, what I do is I like Marcus Farrell Live. Go there. Go over to that channel when you get a chance and watch. I made a video called How to Run for Office with No Money. Right? I want more normal people to run, because like you might not start off being able to run for Senate, but Chuck Schumer is a guy that dictates where the funding goes. So when you have a favorite candidate in your local congressional district and all of a sudden you wonder why AIPAC and the DSCC has decided to give the person that nobody likes $17 million, it's because Chuck Schumer said yes.
Whoa, wait. So you're saying that because people need to hear this. People need to hear, and the reason why I say that because Working Families Party endorsed Chuck Schumer. So, but you're saying that Chuck Schumer. So even if we think back to like, let's say Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, for example, do you think Chuck Schumer could have had a hand in that?
I think somebody asked them a question. I think if you go to AIPAC tracker and you see how much money he's gotten, then if you don't think that the top Democrat in the Senate didn't have something to do with demise of 2 established progressive black politicians, you're out of your mind. Absolutely, Chuck has something to do with it. And listen, I also want to say this right here. There has been a broken clock can be right twice a day. Chuck has done some good votes trying to fight against the Trump administration. But the most important, powerful vote to abstain from voting for that doggone budget, he just conceded with the bad guy. What's the point of having an opposition party? So if this is the mentality, what I'm trying to get across through that tweet, if this is the mentality of our top Democrats, then what is the point of being a Democrat? What is the point of being a part of this organization? What is the point of being a part of an organization that not only concedes to Trump, but has talks about Rahm Emanuel running for office as president? What kind of thought process are we dealing with? Listen, I can't rock with it. And I'm going to tell you like this right here. Like, if Chuck Schumer, if these guys stay in, I'm out. And I'm taking a whole bunch of people with me.
Well, I want to show people this picture because this is years ago. This isn't recent, but this is a good point. People need to look at this picture. It's Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump, right? I'm showing you this picture for a reason. People need to understand that before Donald Trump was president, Donald Trump and Chuck Schumer had a relationship. I don't think people realize this. Like, they're both like old school New York dudes. And remember, guys, before Donald Trump was, running through the Republican Party, he actually used to donate to Democrats. A lot of people don't know this. So I'm pretty sure he made some donations Chuck's way too. So this is why I continue to say it's one big corporate party. But I see a lot of pushback coming now that I wish was a lot louder when Biden was in office. And I'm looking at like what happened in the Senate. I warned people about John Fetterman when he was running for Congress. I said, guys, This guy is not a progressive. He's already agreed to back Israel. He already said these things. Look at where he stands on the policies. I warned people about John Fetterman chasing down the guy with a gun, but pointing a gun to his chest. I told people all these things back then. But when you say those things at that time, people are like, oh, you're just a right winger or da-da-da. I'm like, no, I'm trying to warn you. This guy is not who you think he is. Why do you think he was endorsed by Hillary Clinton? So all of these things are finally, like, I feel like being revealed. But do you think it's enough to, if people say, or well, they are saying, Chuck Schumer, you need to step down. People are also saying this about Hakeem Jeffries. And I did like a whole expose about Hakeem Jeffries and how he got that seat when it's actually Charles Barron who should have been in that seat. Like, all these people just basically sold their soul to AIPAC and to other like corporate interests. And that's how they continue to get the spot. Do you feel that if Chuck Schumer does not resign, that the Democratic Party is done?
I think the Democratic Party is done already. So, but to maintain status quo with the Chuck Schumers of the world, listen, Sabrina, look, these people are actually at a place right now where they fundamentally think that more of the same and more leaning to the right is going to advance the American people and advance gains within the Democratic Party to actually take power back. And to be quite honest with you, even if they took power back, what would it matter? Because y'all had power before and y'all do absolutely nothing with it. Look, I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Actually, a little town called Hateville, right? Black city. Love my town. Atlanta's amazing. Atlanta, baby, you don't owe me nothing in Atlanta. I love you so much. When you go to a barbershop, when you go to the corner store, when you're smoking your ale on the corner with your homeboys, when you're going to church, right? When you're at the basketball. Listen, when you mention the word Democratic Party, and I'm talking about to people who are 45 and younger, 50 and younger at this point, and you mention the Democratic Party, they look at you sideways like, yeah, and what? They have issues. They have issues that they care about. And the Democratic Party is so focused on how to be corporate elite without all the Nazis. That's the only difference, is the less amount of Nazis. But if you kind of supporting Israel and what they're doing to Palestine, I ain't gonna go there, but I don't know. So what I'm saying is not to answer your question. No, we need a fundamental change from the bottom down, right? And I implore people who are watching this as just stewards and trying to get amazing information from Sabrina, right? Like, if you're watching this, then you know what you need to be doing on Wednesday. You need to find out when the next local Democratic Party meeting is and go in that piece. They're boring as hell and a bunch of like lame people talking about the next thing, and bring your own issues up. Because that's the Democratic Party got to die in order for it to be reborn. It has to die.
My big thing to people is, so a lot of things have been said there. I have been advocating for quite some time for people to build something new, right? I understand, and I'll say this, I understand, a number of people have told me this, that the Green Party may not be their cup of tea, right? But it is the third party that has reparations a part of the platform and the agenda, and has had it for years. So I see, when I looked at that Bernie platform, I see that over at the Green Party and then some, because they also have reparations as well. Jill Stein also had Cancer Alley as a part of her platform, which Kamala Harris wasn't talking about. Like, they're not even talking about what's happening to Black people in this country when we talk about healthcare, when we talk about environmental like racism that people are dealing with. They're not even wanting to touch like those issues. A lot of the pushback I received is, well, the third parties aren't viable. But I think the case that me and Bree have been trying to make is that we should be building these things up now. We should be trying to, like Butch Ware, for example, is running for governor of California. And as much as people say that Greens don't run other elections or they're nowhere to be found, I've interviewed Green Party mayors on this show, right? So they are running in these races. They just don't get the attention from corporate media or independent media, to be honest with you. So I feel like we spent so much time like trying to reform the Democratic Party that we should be investing in third parties and even outside of politics, mutual aid organizations, that type of stuff. So that's one of the things I do is also mutual aid. So I noticed after the election, I'm sure you noticed this too, there were a lot of people that were upset right after Kamala lost, even though I knew she was going to lose. But a lot of people were upset or hurt, and then people just kind of like sink back down, right? But that's because they have nothing else to go back to. Because if you're only putting your energy into the presidential election, and you're not, what are you doing the other years? There isn't a
Right.
presidential election. So I've been trying to get people to get involved with like third party organizing or get involved with organizing period in your community or mutual aid. So I'm curious to hear your perspective about that because I think you did vote third party, correct?
I did, and I'm still a Democrat. You know why? Because I vote my issues. It's amazing that Black people can't vote their issues. And like we have to vote the way that people tell us to vote, not our issues. I voted my issues, right? So I want police reform and I want reparations. I'm not gonna say who I voted for, but I'm just gonna say like and I'm a registered Democrat. I still am. Listen, everywhere is not like San Francisco, man. You could be a progressive in San Francisco and then be considered the far right. That's the most amazing city in the world, right? But then on the same on another token, right? Listen, it's interesting, and part of an organization, and our biggest argument right now is how do we affect change for working class folks and poor people in poverty. I'm going to say that word, poverty. You know why? Because it wasn't said during the presidential election at all. Poverty. There's poor people in America. America needs a living wage. At this point, it used to be $15 an hour. Now we need $20 an hour. We've gone way beyond the $15 an hour conversation in general. So to me, it's the big unknown, Sabrina. That's how I'm going to respond to the third party versus reforming the Democratic Party. Here's why. There are places in the South. There are places in Arizona. There are places where you have some of the most progressive Democrats that will fight tooth and nail, have introduced reparations bills, have introduced living wage bills, right? And the only way that they got there is because their district voted them in as a progressive Democrat, right? Then you have the conversation, well, there's so much pushback against these people that why would they stay in that party? Why would they go through all that when you know at the end of the day, the Democratic Party as it is right now is more concerned about corporate interests than the interests of people. Then there's a viability conversation about the Green Party and other parties across where they have this perfect platform. Well, perfect to some people. You might have some problems with some of the things they say, but pretty much a much more left-leaning progressive platform that a lot of people that would help a lot of people. But then it's like the numbers aren't there, right? We don't believe you. You need more people, as Jay-Z said. And so there has to be a conversation. And I mean, listen, I worked for Bernie in 2016. I'm very close with Dr. Cornel West. I'm very close with him. He's a mentor of mine. And I met Jill Stein at the Green Party convention in 2016 also, right? So I love what the people are saying. My thing is just like this. And I say the same thing about electoral politics when it comes down to reparations, right? Like people need to understand certain things. The civics of it has to match and make sense. If I can be shown a plan that there can be a primary in a certain state where the Green Party shows up to get 50 plus 1% of a vote so they can actually win a primary, then Green Party is the way to go. If I can see a plan where the Democratic Party is actually reformed so they won't be F-boys and trash bombs and pretty much just cap-ass, bullshit-ass, whatever they are. I'm sorry for cussing on the channel, but they suck, man. Like, and I am one, right? Then that's the math that gets along with that. So I'm stuck in between, right? Because I know too many Democrats that think like me, right? They're like, all this crap sucks. We need to reform it. And also, I'm not going to go over to the Green Party because I don't think they can win. And then there's people who are like, hey, you know what? Green Party is where it's at because at least they listen to me. At least I can be a delegate. At least we're not bought out by corporate interests. And at least AIPAC is not on every single candidate's list. So the jury's out for me right now. Right now I am doing the Reform the Democratic Party thing, but trust and believe. I understand and see. I see you, Green Party. I do. I see y'all.
Yes, it's interesting, and it's nice to be able to have like this conversation, because I think that on this show, like this isn't an echo chamber. So we bring on people with different ideas, different, strategies, that type of thing, to see where people are at. And so people can hear like different perspectives, because right now, people are asking AOC to, I guess, run against Chuck Schumer, like for his seat. And I would imagine that he would have the money to prevent that from happening.
Oh yeah, Chuck Schumer is going to back up the AIPAC Brinks truck. It's going to be about 70 of them that back up in front of AOC's apartment. And them little shoes that she used to knock on all them doors that had the holes in them, she's going to have to multiply herself times 8. Look, the problem is there's only but so much that money can do. I'm in electoral politics. I used to be Stacey Abrams' deputy campaign manager. I got the first black mayor elected to the state to the city of Jacksonville. I ran a reparations candidate, and we actually put out a mailer. I'm so proud of myself. We put out a mailer. He was independent out Andre Sanford. He's independent out of California. Ran against Mia Bonta in California. And we put out a mailer that said the word reparations on it. It was so beautiful, right? The electoral science to me is very important. And there's only one thing that people don't understand. There's only but so much money that a candidate can spend. I know that sounds crazy, but just follow what I'm saying to you. Because there's only a certain amount of points that you can put up on television, right? And after a little while, if AOC's ground game, it's always going to come back to the doors. I hate to be like this, but it will. Because if the ground game, they can buy up all the television ads they want to. And then, just like if you lived in anywhere in America and you turn on your television in early November, late October, all you saw was presidential commercials, back to back to back to back to back. Didn't move anyone anywhere. Didn't change anybody's perspective. But they just spent billions of dollars on this. So my thought process is, I think that AOC's message. So let me say this: Chuck's gonna spend a lot of money, but we're at a time right now where people want something different. They want change, and I don't mean Obama hoping change. I mean actual change. So.
But I think that more people want change, or maybe not more, but I think a lot of people also want change outside of the two-party system. And that's what I've been seeing. I do want to show you these numbers that just came through from CNN. I thought this was pretty interesting. We'll go ahead and bring this in. There are new poll numbers here for the Democratic Party approval rating. And now they're saying it's at an all-time low.
Good morning. Welcome Inside Politics Sunday. I'm Manu Raj. First up this morning, a brand new exclusive CNN poll that paints a brutal reality for Democrats as they struggle to mount a unified opposition to President Trump. Americans' favorable views of the Democratic Party's brand are at a record low, just 29%. That's compared to 36% for Republicans. It is the lowest ever recorded for Democrats in CNN polling, going back more than 30 years. As you can see.
Now, do you think that this is because, again, like 29, like that's the lowest ever, they said. Do you think this is because of the Dem leadership? People are unhappy with, because Democrats are not in power right now. Republicans are in power. Do you think it's because people are unhappy with Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries? Or do you think they just feel like the Democratic Party isn't fighting at all?
Sabrina, listen, 15% of black men in Texas voted for Trump. 15%. That's a lot. That's a lot, right? Here's how I feel about this conversation. Black people made the Democratic Party cool. And now black people are starting to think the Democratic Party is lame. Right? Like, so just check this out. Nobody, like, if you like hip hop, if you have any rap song memorized, any rap song anywhere, if you like any like R&B artist, I think, you understand that like our culture, African American culture, actually created a lot of things that America follows, right? Except for politics, but I think that that's starting to reach across the board too. So what I'm getting at is, I'm not even gonna go into the stats of it. It's absolutely leadership, and it's absolutely lame. And then Trump is doing an amazing job at this one thing and one thing alone. He's showing that, oh yeah, I can be the president and actually do shit, right? So like he's mastering the art form of Democrats are lame, and here's why they're lame: because y'all could have done anything you wanted to, but you were too busy trying to strike a balance between corporate interests. Too busy trying to strike a balance between throwing a fish fry corporate interest and keeping people from looking behind the veil and actually seeing that, oh, Jim Clyburn ain't doing nothing for his poor ass district, right? It's lame. If I was born when Jim Clyburn first took that office, I'm old enough to vote right now. If I'm old enough to vote right now, and I know that when Jim Clyburn came into office, we were in poverty. And now that I can vote, we're still in poverty, right? That means that him as a leader is lame. That means the party is lame. But the thing about it is, we know it's lame. I'm not even pushing back. My thing is, okay, so there's a certain amount of people who vote for Democrats who just vote for the D, and they're like blind. They're just blind, right? They don't know no better. They could care less. But that generation is dying off. That generation that blindly supports Democrats and tries to make it a binary conversation is going dead. To answer your question, it's not the people of the Democratic Party. It's the leadership of the Democratic Party. It's when southern states, if you are a Democratic Party in the South, and you know that your constituency that votes for you the most is filled with the descendants of chattel slavery in America, enslavement in America, and your platform doesn't say reparations, then that means that you are lame. I have no problem calling the Democratic Party lame anymore. They elevate the worst people. Like, let me tell you something. The people that they give power to in the Democratic Party are literal succubuses. You ever watch Rick and Morty? What's the dad's name? The dad is Jerry. They're all Jerrys. The Democratic Party is all Jerrys, soft as hell and mumbling and shit like that. I'm sorry.
No, I totally hear where you're coming from, but it's interesting because now people are on social media and they're saying that there needs to be a left Tea Party, and I'm like, but there was a left Tea Party. It was called Justice Democrats, and part of the reason why some people like myself were more, I guess, like harder on the Justice Democrats is because they weren't pushing back against Dem leadership, and that was the assignment. The assignment was to have a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party. We knew that if they did not effectively push back on Dem leadership, that Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer would run right over them, and the party would move even more to the right. That's what we're seeing now. So now people are really upset when they're like, well, Chuck Schumer voted along with Donald Trump, and so did all these 9 other Democrats. But that's what you guys never pushed back. Now they don't have a narrow majority. Back then they had a narrow majority to actually make some type of change on legislation or force a vote on Medicare for all or anything. Doesn't have to be Medicare for all. Could have been any progressive policy. And they decided not to do that. Well, now that narrow majority that they had is gone. And now the party is just going along with, you can't sit here and tell people, Chuck Schumer, you can't sit here and tell people Donald Trump is Hitler. Then why are you voting with Hitler?
Well, because he doesn't believe that. It's blatantly obvious that when you are a multimillionaire that happens to be an elected official and you vote the way that you vote, you are not going to instantaneously feel the impact of it. Listen, this is a money game, Sabrina. You know that. This is all a money game. You talk about the Justice Democrats, who I love dearly. You talk about anything on the left. You got to think about who people on the left are and how come we can't build sustainable fights against folks. You know why? They have us so poor that it's easy for establishment Democrats to buy off some of the most wonderfully progressive people in the world. They'll get elevated, they'll get quieted, they'll get silenced, and most importantly, the organizations and the money that comes from it. We haven't rebuilt another Bernie self-sustaining million people donation network like Bernie had when he ran for office. That is not there anymore. Therefore, people need to sustain themselves and be able to pay their bills. And the people who are making decisions aren't worried about the price of eggs, right? The people who are making decisions aren't worried about that their kid could get sent off to a war. They're not worried about the ramifications of police violence, right? And they're definitely not worried about losing African American AP studies in schools across the nation. They're not worried about that stuff because their kids are not they're not in the same place. Chuck Schumer is a millionaire. Chuck Schumer already was playing golf with Trump before Trump even thought about running for president. This is a big game and we're not in it. So yes, some of these people need to get primary. And you know who needs to primary these people? And I don't give a damn if you run as an independent Green Party or a Republican if you're a progressive. I don't care what you run as. You got to run against people no matter how you feel about it. Just run. We need more people running for office. I don't give a damn what party they're in. Present your platform, because the AOCs of the world, somebody's going to need to replace AOC, and and you got to know for certain that APEC is going to be after that seat if AOC wins. Like, there's a Florida governor's race right now that's going on, right? Byron Donald's sellout ass is thinking about running for governor, and he might be the first black governor of Florida. I need more Dan Osborns of the world out of Nebraska, who was an independent and literally tried to take on the Republican establishment and almost won while being a free-thinking, progressive-thinking person. There's a lot of opportunities for us out here, but good people need to run so we can take these F-boys and soft Jerry's out of office.
Well, speaking of running, someone did. This is Jose Vega. I'm not sure you're familiar with him. He ran against Richie Torres because Richie Torres is another one that sold out, very problematic. Said he was a progressive, lied, of course. And he ran against him as an independent. I want you to hear what he said to Bree on Bad Faith. He had confronted Jamal Bowman at a town hall. And this is another thing. Some of the progressives don't like this. They don't like when they're approached or confronted at town halls or whatever. But I want you to hear what he said he did before that confrontation took place and why he confronted him the way that he did. Listen to this.
I do think it's important because when he just paints me as adversarial left, he needs to understand I tried to reach him through all the proper channels. I got a meeting with his senior science policy advisor. And in that call, which I posted a segment of on my X, I told him, like, I understand that I don't know the inner workings of Congress the way you do. I don't know how policies get passed internally. I know there was a big fight around Medicare for all, but I'm willing to work with your office and go to various schools in your district in the Bronx to get other students to advocate for this program. And his senior advisor just kind of like nodded his head and was like, yeah, no, Bowman is with you all the way. He's been talking about making the Bronx like Wakanda, is what he said verbatim. And so I was like, great. Like, all right, so, when do we follow up? Like, maybe I can set up, some school visits I can call. He's like, no, we'll call you. And like weeks and months after follow up, like nothing,
Mm-hmm.
And so I really started to understand sort of the frustration that people were having as activists trying to go through the proper channels. But then this war in Ukraine breaks out. That's really kind of like pushed me to be like, okay, like these guys are completely ineffective when it comes to domestic policy and trying to make the Bronx a better place. Now he's at the point where he's funding neo-Nazis in Ukraine. This is very well documented. And he's hosting this town hall. And so I'm going to this town hall where he's doing it with Hakeem Jeffries. Now we're starting to get into what he's referencing. With Bowman, I wasn't trying to disrupt. I go to Bowman's event and they tell me, hi, if you have a question, you have to write it on this card and put it in a fishbowl. So I sit through this boring talk between him and Hakeem Jeffries. And this is just before Nancy Pelosi steps down as Speaker of the House. And they were talking about, both of them were talking about how, oh, this is going to be our next Speaker of the House. Bowman was saying, Hakeem Jeffries is going to be the next Speaker of House, yada, yada, yada. Here's all the things we're going to do. Oh, it seems like Mr. Jeffries has to go, so we're going to wrap this event up, but I just want to let people know we can do more on this. And then that's when I'm like, okay, fuck this.
You basically decided to interject when it became clear that they weren't going to answer questions. And this was the only way you were going to get heard.
Exactly. That's right.
So I bring this up because this is a part of the reason why a lot of people stayed home, Marcus. Where a lot of people, even some of the people that told me they were going to vote green, stayed home. Like a lot of people just stayed home because there was a time when a lot of these politicians that ran through Justice Democrats, they were very much involved. They were on independent media. I remember seeing all these people before I even had this show. Once they got elected, they totally just turned out. Like they were less interested in independent media, but also they were, I think, like less interested in being held accountable, right? So when we send someone to office that's a Justice Democrats, and we know that platform says you are not supposed to support Israel, that you're supposed to back BDS, that you're not supposed to entertain any trips to Israel. Yeah, Jamal Bowman, we're gonna have words for you. Like, yeah, AOC, when you do a webinar, conflate anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, yes, we're going to have words for you. And what indeed happened is after reaching out to their offices, which a lot of people did first, and getting no response, or they'll get back to you or whatever, then came the outbursts, like at the town halls, et cetera, right? They were nowhere to be found, Marcus. We had marches in this country for Medicare for All in over 50 cities. This was about 3 years ago. All of their offices were contacted. The only person who appeared was Cori Bush. So even if they couldn't make it, they could have at least like tweeted it or shared that information. Nothing. They ran on it. They ran on Medicare for All. And what it does is it makes people more angry and more frustrated. And then we're told, well, just support the establishment Democrats, right? Like the same people who said don't support politicians that take billionaire money told you to vote for Kamala Harris. And Kamala Harris she still wouldn't even, I guess, admit to, I'm not going to give weapons to Israel. No, she said she would continue to give them weapons. And so it's just, there's a lot of like finger pointing because Kamala lost, but also because the Democrats lost the House and the Senate and all these things. But at the end of the day, for years, I feel like we tried to warn. We tried to do it through the right way, through the proper channels. But it's very clear that money is controlling all of it.
Listen, the Harris campaign lost because they ran a terrible campaign. If the vice president had ran the platform that she came out with when she ran for president herself, she would have stood. I mean, she's talking about a living wage. She was talking about Medicare for all. Y'all forget that Kamala Harris. Like, we forget that one because she wanted to maintain the status quo. Cori Bush always got me excited as a human being, only because like that lady is exactly what she says she is. So let's use her as a shining light on this conversation, right? There's not many Corys on earth. There's not many Cori Bushes in local politics. It was a blessing to have her as sort of the beacon for what a progressive person could look like. And the fact that she was a Black woman actually sort of elevated that for me even more, because she walked it like she talked it, and she did show up for things. And she did. The thing about it is you can't be scared. When you get to DC, I think Jamal might have been a little scared. I think a lot of these politicians get scared because they know that I want to represent my district for a long time, or I want to be able to win my re-election. Therefore, I don't want to piss off AIPAC. I don't want to piss off this donor group. I don't want to piss off that donor group. And if you Black, you got to know that they're against you anyway, unless you're doing exactly what they say, right? So, yeah. There's a problem with integrity when you get up there. Am I saying Jamal, brother Jamal doesn't have any integrity? He showed a lot more integrity than 90% of the Democratic Party, but there was also aspects of him not being, I want to say, not being able to get scared. And guess what? He was right. APEC came in there and took his ass out, just like they did Bush. That's why we need to have fair and free elections, so we won't have publicly funded elections, so we won't have this problem. Whereas, like, no matter what happens, may the best platform win, and we're not at that place right now, Sabrina. And I'm hoping that we can. Right? I hope that we can get to a place where we take all this money out of politics, because then there's nothing left but issues and the issues of our communities, right? And also, we got to support the people that are actually doing the work, are willing to do the work. We don't support these people. And what I mean by that is we're bombarded with emails. We're bombarded with text messages. We're bombarded with donate. Man, I ain't got no goddamn money to do. If I donate to y'all, I'm not paying mortgage or rent. I'm not going to be able to do it messing around with all these emails. Check your email box right now. I bet you somebody asked you for some damn money today, right? So we got to be a little bit smarter about our politics. And what I mean by that is everybody has to start donating $3, $4 to a particular group of people that you know for a fact, even though we don't all know for a fact what anybody's going to do when they get to DC, but that presents the best platform and also has the track record. If you didn't donate to Cori Bush at all, right, and you know that she was a person that did everything that she possibly could, then you know you're kind of doing us a disservice unless you go over to her state and knock on doors for her. You either knocking on doors or you're giving that money to the right candidates.
Well, I don't know what I would say. She did everything that she could, but
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. But I want to end this with 11 demands, because my producer, he has this strategy called 11 demands, and he's calling this cluing in after what just happened, of course, with the GOP Senate race, and he's calling out Hakeem Jeffries here, who was asked by a reporter, is it time for new leadership in the Senate? And Hakeem Jeffries' response was, next question. So he didn't want to answer that question, of course. But the point that I think Eric gets to here is that we need to do more than explain the current mess. We need to describe what a better world looks like. This is the core of 11 demands. And so Eric started this idea of 11 demands, and he said that these are the things that we really need to demand from the government. Fix big money in politics and the government, healthcare for all, a minimum standard of living for everyone in the wars, respond to the climate emergency, racial and criminal justice reform, which also includes reparations, by the way, when you go into the details, reject censorship, immigration reform, an election system we can trust, revamp taxation and funding, and democratize the enterprise. And I think this is a big part of the problem. We don't have demands. Like, it's just like, I really do mean, like, the left in particular, it's just like, we'll have separate ask, right? Like, there was defund the police, there was, ceasefire in Gaza, but we really didn't have a concrete set of core demands. And maybe that's part of the problem.
You're right. That, first off, that list is beautiful. Well done to your producer. Look, the left, and I'm not talking about the Democratic Party, and I'm also not talking about neoliberals, because they're not the left, right? The left should be winning a lot more than they're winning right now. You know why? Because there's more poor people and middle class people than there are Republicans and conservatives. There's more poor people in America than there are rich people in America. That's the basics of why we should be winning more elections, whether you're an independent Green Party or a Democrat. That's the reason why we should win more elections. But we don't tap into it. The Harris campaign did not tap into poverty. If I don't hear you saying, hey, you know what? Why are you afraid to raise the minimum wage, Vice President Harris? Why are you afraid to say that basic premise when you go to and have a rally in Atlanta, Georgia, and you much rather have somebody twerking on stage than you are standing up in front of people and just saying, yo, We need $20. You need $23.15 to have a 1-bedroom apartment in Atlanta, Georgia right now. That's what you need, no matter what. $23 an hour, right? That's Atlanta. If you live in San Francisco, you need to be making 50. If you live, and they're not addressing the basics of, at this point, it should be a federal law that we have a mandatory wages that fit the cost of living in our towns, but they don't talk about it, right? So the next generation of people who run from this point on, from 2026 and any special election up to 2026, if they're not talking, I'm not feeling you if you're not talking about a living wage. I'm not feeling you if you're not talking about reparations. I'm not feeling you if you're not talking about doing something about the issue that's going on in Palestine, where innocent babies are getting killed on a daily basis, and we get criticized and called anti-Semitic if you just bring up the fact that kids are dying. That's just my thought process.
All right, Marcus. Marcus, thank you so much for your time. Please let everybody know where they can find you.
Yeah, I am Marcus for America on Instagram. I am Marcus Farrell Live on YouTube. Please go check me out. I have a bunch of crazy stuff over there, and I'm about to do a lot more crazy stuff. And also, I am 1/3 of the powerful clickbaity political thirst trap, along with Benjamin Dixon and Mondale Robinson. You can catch us every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. Clickbaity political thirst trap on YouTube and on the Ben Dixon channel. And listen, everybody who watches this show, y'all are righteous people, man. This woman is amazing. Sabrina, I am sorry that it took me so long to actually show up. But anytime you want me, you got me, sis.
Awesome, Marcus. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. All right, guys, that was Marcus Farrell. We have quite a bit more to discuss, ladies and gentlemen. Again, like I told you, today's theme is here's what really happened with the news stories that we have today. First and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Appreciate you, fam. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate. Why is this on here? I hate this thing that shows up that says paste. Ultimate, Sabinators. There's also Sabsters. Don't forget about those guys as well. I'll have to fix this document. Sorry, guys. And there are Sabbies. Hey, hey, hey. And don't forget about those members as well. All of their names are listed here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. And we want to give a shout out to new Sabby patrons. Over here, we call them newbies. Let's give it up for Riker, Mark Murray, T. Michelle Sosa. I guess we rocking with the Michelles today. BK and Aisha Jackson. All right. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate you, fam. Hey, hey, hey. I hope my sound is okay, guys. I told you I think that I changed this pop filter because people told me that I needed a real one. So I hope my sound is a little bit better. If not, I'm sure you guys will let me know. But anyway, we got to get on with the other stories, ladies and gentlemen. Let me go ahead to some of these comments, and then we're going to get into some of the breaking news stories that happened over this weekend. Joseph said Dems sabotaged themselves by not holding a primary. It's not a sure thing she would have won a primary. Tim Walz could have beaten her easily. Oh, that's an interesting point. Thank you, Sip Sauce. Sabby, happy Sunday to you. Hello, Sip. Thank you, Focus. I think it's crazy that it's okay to call Chuck Schumer a wealthy white donor, but if you say the truth and call him a wealthy Jewish donor, you are called racist. It just demonstrates to me who really has systemic power. Ooh, that's an interesting point, Focus. Thank you, Resurrect. Oh, Cinema lost for her stance on the filibuster. Yeah. Plus, she left the party too. Don't forget about that. And thank you for this one. Now Dems want the filibuster hypocrites. Okay, I have to go through that thread on X because Kirsten Sinema and Ro Khanna are going back and forth with each other for quite some time about this issue, the filibuster. So I have to go through that thread and see what's going on there. Thank you, Janice. Green Party has their own primaries. They don't run in the Dem primary. So would not be getting over 50% in the Dem primaries. Good point there, Janice. Thank you, Staccato David. These people don't seem to understand we aren't moved by word salads. They have no merit for working poor, struggling, marginalized, and disabled people. And thank you, ASD. We just gonna say ASD. Can't primary Schumer, but because Dem primary is rigged. Thank you, Better You. Why do we think our elections are free and fair? Well, we definitely don't think they're free, and I don't think we think they're fair either. Thank you, Focus. Of course, Chuck Schumer can easily vote for GOP bills because it benefits his country, Israel. He doesn't care about this country or Democrat values. There you go, Focus. You got it. Thank you, Janice. He doesn't understand primaries. Dem primaries are only for Dems. He keeps saying Greens Indies should run against the Dem in primaries. They can't. And then thank you, David. Every decision made by the DNC and GOP is to enrich themselves and their donors, insider trading, money laundering via arms shipments, etc. Rigged game. Thank you so much for that. We'll get that comment on Rockfin, and then we'll go ahead and dive into our next story. Hey. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Cuomo wasn't going to resign. That changed after speaking with Chuck. So yeah, Chuck more powerful than our governor, which is why I figured Hochul would not push for the New York Health Act unless Chuck gave her the nod, which is why I pressed him. Marcus made it sound as if people are registering Democrat and yet left out the fact that Georgia, Arkansas, Illinois, Michigan, Montana, Missouri, North Dakota, Ohio, Mississippi, Washington, Hawaii, Vermont, Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Minnesota, Indiana, Virginia, Wisconsin, and Wyoming register independent. And thank you for this one as well. He was way off with the minimum wage for Georgia when he said $23.50 an hour and $50 in San Fran, when Georgia should be $29 to $36 an hour, California $47 to $38 an hour, but $64 to $60 for San Francisco. He's still trying to hold on to reforming the Dem Party when he's Indy by default, Black registers independent instead. Thank you so much for that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't had a chance to do so, smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share. And again, tonight's theme is here's what really happened. So over the weekend, apparently, Donald Trump decided to strike the Houthis in Yemen. Hear why this is going to be a big problem. Number one, it wasn't just the Houthis that were attacked. There were also civilians that were killed in Yemen, including children, which you'll hear about that in just a second. But also, this is Donald Trump doing the order of Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu wants him to attack Yemen because it gives Israel a reason to go to war with Iran. We'll get into this a little bit more. Let's start off with this clip here, ladies and gentlemen. Breaking news.
He says, today, I have ordered the United States military to launch decisive and powerful military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. They have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other ships, aircraft, and drones. The statement goes on to say Joe Biden's response was pathetically weak, so the unrestrained Houthis just keep going. It has been over a year since a U.S.-flagged commercial ship safely sailed through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, or the Gulf of Aden. The last American warship to go through the Red Sea 4 months ago was attacked by the Houthis over a dozen times. Funded by Iran, the Houthi thugs have fired missiles at U.S. aircraft and targeted our troops and allies. These relentless assaults have cost the U.S. and world economy many billions of dollars, while at the same time putting innocent lives at risk. The Houthi attack on American vessels will not be tolerated. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. The Houthis have choked off shipping in one of the most important waterways of the world, grinding vast swaths of global commerce to a halt and attacking the core principle of freedom of navigation upon which international trade and commerce depends. Our brave warfighters are right now carrying out aerial attacks on the terrorist bases, leaders, and missile defenses to protect American shipping, air, and naval assets, and to restore navigational freedom. No terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing the waterways of the world. Want to pop you out to this live image one.
We're going to stop here. So that was the statement from Donald Trump that he posted on Truth Social. And I got to say this, and we'll get into a little bit more details about who was actually hit and who was harmed. First and foremost, you have to understand what's really happening. OK, so here's what's really happening. Iran backs the Houthis, just like Iran backed Hamas, just like Iran backed Hezbollah, right? So this was the axis of resistance. Israel has managed to weaken the axis of resistance, right? So they have done this by, obviously attacking Hezbollah in Lebanon. They've also done this by occupying and entering Syria full force now. And of course, with Hamas as well. As Donald Trump said, there is this ceasefire. Israel has already broken the ceasefire, as they usually do anyway. But you have to understand that if the axis of resistance is broken and if it is weakened, then that means that Israel will get to continue to grow across the Middle East, occupy and oppress, and also displace people. How does that happen? Well, number one, this is what Bibi wants. This is what Benjamin Netanyahu wants, which is for the U.S. to strike Yemen, to get a response from Iran. And thus, if it gets a response from Iran, then that means that Israel will try its best to convince the United States government to get their troops involved in an all-out war against Iran. You see, right now, the biggest hurdle for Israel is Iran. And if they can get them out of the way, then they can continue with their plan to build a greater Israel. Then you wouldn't have Hezbollah, you wouldn't have Iran, they were occupied part of Lebanon still. So you wouldn't have Iran would be out of the way. If they continue to take over Gaza, which I still think is the plan and what they're going to do, then they wouldn't have Hamas. Hamas, from what I understand, has already agreed to try to leave if they wanted to. We'll get into that a little bit more. And then also they have gone into Syria. If all of these forces are out of the way, that means that Israel can continue to expand. Now, this is where I feel like the other Arab nations really need to stand up, because the biggest hurdle for them is Iran. Saudi Arabia is just kind of chilling there. Egypt, same thing. Jordan, same thing. But if I were Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Jordan, I would look at it this way. How long before they come and take over our territory, right? How long before they come into Jordan and take over? How long before they come into Egypt and take over? How long before they try to tiptoe into Saudi Arabia and take over? So that's how I would look at it. This is why I said before, the other Arab nations have got to take a stand. And they're not going to do that, though, because they have a tight relationship with the United States government. That's why they don't take a stand against Israel. So now we're looking at escalating the Middle Eastern conflicts, right? But more importantly, it was Donald Trump who issued the strike in Yemen, which, once again, I want you to write this down, put it on your calendar, folks, because I want to remind you, this is not a peace politician. That is not anti-war. And we'll go into a little bit me here because I want to show you some other things, right? Because some of the things that he said are not only false, but the problem is also that he went around Congress. And I want to bring this in here as well. This is from Justin Amash. I'll say it again. It is unconstitutional for President Trump to engage in acts of war in Yemen. It doesn't matter how appropriate you think it is for the U.S. to take on Houthis or terrorists or anyone. Congress has not authorized war in Yemen. Engaging in war there is unlawful. And this is why and again, Justin Amos at one point was a Republican. I think he's now independent, and a lot happened there with Justin. But this is one of the things I've warned people about too as well, is that when it comes to foreign policy, this is the one area where the president can just kind of go, I think I'm just going to do this. You see how he just stepped right over Congress to do that? So again, everybody needs to stop saying, for the people who are still saying this, stop saying Donald Trump is anti-war. I told you he wasn't. He wasn't anti-war in 2016 during his first presidency, when he had strikes against Syria, then when he struck people in Somalia. Don't forget that he was the one that went after Soleimani. So I don't know why all of a sudden people's memory has been shortened. But that's not peace. That's not anti-war. That's escalation. And the last thing anyone should run right now is escalation in the Middle East. And that's exactly what he did. I'm going to show you also the statement here from Ansar as well, so you can see why they are blocking that area. Al Jazeera here says Houthis say children among 32 killed after the U.S. fighter jets bomb Yemen. The U.S. raids came after Trump warned the hell will rain down if the Houthis attack ships in the Red Sea. Children, again. So now you see, once again, ladies and gentlemen, what did I tell you? Now you see under Biden and under Donald Trump, both are killing children. And that should not be a partisan issue for anyone. If you're okay with people killing children, I would ask you to check yourself. Little kids and shit. So a little bit more detail here that I want to get into. We're going to debunk some of the things that he said. We already ran through his statement there. So shout out to Al Jazeera for this. False misleading. The Houthis, who control much of Yemen, have yet to attack any ships, despite threatening to do so last week over Israel's blockade on all food, fuel, and other supplies in the Gaza Strip. So do you see what is happening? There was no attack from them on any of those ships. They threatened to do so, but they didn't. So the U.S. struck first. I'm telling you this because corporate media isn't going to. So make sure you write this down. This is important for people to know. In a statement, a Houthi spokesman, excuse me one second, I lost my spot. Here we go. In a statement, a Houthi spokesman accused the U.S. of overstating the threat to shipping operations to influence public opinion. What the U.S. president claims about a threat to international navigation in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, excuse my pronunciation, sorry guys, is false and misleading to international public opinion. That's coming from Mohammed Abdul Salam. The maritime embargo declared by Yemen in support of Gaza is limited only to Israeli navigation until humanitarian aid is delivered to the people of Gaza, according to the ceasefire agreement between the Palestinian resistance and the enemy entity. The political bureau of Houthis issued a separate statement describing the attacks as a war crime and promised to respond. The aggression will not go unanswered. Our Yemeni armed forces are fully prepared to respond to escalation with escalation. So does everybody see what's happening now? So for as many who said that Trump would bring peace there, no, Trump is escalating the tensions in the Middle East. Of course, they're going to respond, but that's exactly what the U.S. government wanted to happen. There was a conversation here from Max Blumenthal, and I want you to hear what was said about why they were doing what they're doing. Our ultimate goal is to establish a global order based on justice for all people of the world. Now, this is Max Blumenthal. He spoke to Mohammed al-Bukhari, spokesman for Yemen's Ansar Allah, which is now under attack by U.S. military. Just going to take you back. I want you to listen to what was said.
Why was Ansar Allah willing to risk so much to attempt to force a ceasefire in Gaza, and was the price worth it?
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
In the name of God, the most merciful, we in the Ansar Allah movement act based on religious and moral principles, not agendas or self-interest. That is why we were prepared to make every sacrifice to defend the oppressed in Gaza. We successfully pressured the US and the Zionist entity, ultimately leading to a ceasefire. Our operations became the most significant leverage for the Palestinian resistance. Without them, I fear the Palestinian people would have suffered even greater losses, and the war would still be ongoing today. Yemen has endured immense suffering due to American and British policies. The price we paid was heavy, but it is insignificant compared to our duty toward Gaza. Our ultimate goal is to help establish a global order based on justice for all peoples of the world.
So a shout out to Max for that conversation there. So again, they were trying to obviously help the Palestinian people. And I think like people, when I say here's what really happened, what really is happening is that Israel wanted Donald Trump to do this. It all goes back to them. Wanted him to do it. Now, obviously, he didn't have to do it, but I mean, you know, he kind of took the money that said he would do it. You know what I mean? So that's how this works. So now you have more kids being killed yet again. Thank you so much for this one, Wrath. People's memory been short and sad because they have literally been brainwashed by TikTok in 30-second intervals. I think that could be a part of it as well. People are just totally forgetting about the things that happened prior in Donald Trump's presidency. And I want to bring in what Ali says as well here. Thank you so much for this, Ali, who's a part of the Electronic Intifada. Yemen has made clear that the sea blockade will end when the Israeli genocide and blockade of Gaza ends. Donald Trump knows this, but is doing this for Israel while pretending it is for America and Americans. And that's what people really have to understand, you guys. Again, that's not making America, you know, great. That's not putting America first. That's putting Israel first. That's really what that is about. So don't forget that Israel decided to stop allowing goods and foods into Gaza yet again. They are doing a starvation tactic yet again to people in Gaza. So no, it is not right. That is a war crime. That is against international law. You cannot starve people. But they've been doing it. And you know who lets them get away with it? The US government. You can add the UK to that too, because they're basically just an extension of the US, okay? When people get real and they decide they want to break ties from the atrocities that our government commits, let me know. Until then, you're just an extension of the US government. That's it. That's how I see it. It's very sad and very unfortunate. Like I was trying to tell you guys, that is the last of what we see as the resistance right now this far. And you can call them whatever you want to, but have you seen Yemen? Have you seen the images of Yemen? What the U.S. government did to Yemen? Don't forget it was the U.S. government who gave weapons to Saudi Arabia to kill all those people in Yemen. And now we're killing people in Yemen again. This is why there was even a bill at one point that was going to be brought to the Senate floor about Yemen to stop it. Like they another genocide, you can say, to speak. In Yemen, all the people they've killed. That's our government, guys. And now they're killing them again. Most of the carnage that has taken place in the Middle East is because of the US government and because of Israel. Most of it. Same as around the world. And everyone has to call this out. It doesn't matter. I don't care what your political ideology is. If you say you're anti-war, you got to call this out. Because here we go yet again. It's a mess. Let's go to some of the comments here. Record Galaxy said, we need Congress to get involved no matter how you feel. Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, just straight like overstepping, just killing people. They're just killing people and kids. Thank you, Zora. I love your show. You've got loads of compassion and passion. Thank you so much, Zora. Caroline, Congress hasn't declared war since WW2, World War II. And Random says it was an insightful interview. Yeah, the interview that Max had with that gentleman there from Ansar Allah was very, very insightful. So guys, I'm telling you, we're going to continue to follow this story because I already saw corporate media's like they went and got them and went after them and and like Trump's statement is false. So see, this is why you have to look towards independent media so you can get the full statement. The US struck first, and that's what I want you to take home. We're going to go to the next story. This is also crazy. Another crazy story. Thank you, Marlon. Israel is the US government. That's another way of putting it. Thank you. All right, guys, if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're going on to the next story. This is crazy. So this is kind of local for me, but it's made national news, and you'll see why. Apparently, a German national who has a green card was detained by ICE at Logan Airport and was treated in the most brutal way. Now, this stems from the detaining of Mahmoud Khalil. Now we are seeing that ICE apparently has been ordered to put more pressure on green card residents. So then this is another green card resident who apparently went on vacation back to Germany to visit his fam and came back here and probably is wishing that he didn't come back. This is what it says here. This is an interesting story, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you share this one because I want to make sure more people know how far this is going. German national with a green card was detained by ICE after arriving at Logan Airport. So that's here in Boston. Like I said, it was a local thing for us here. So let's get into what happened. Immigration authorities arrested a German national with a green card at Logan Airport, according to a family member and the partner of the man that was interviewed by the Boston Globe. Fabian Schmidt of New Hampshire is being held at the Wyatt Detention Center in Central Falls, Rhode Island. That's according to a public immigration and customs enforcement database. Schmidt, 34, was born in Germany, but has been in the U.S. since his teens. He has a green card that was reissued in 2023 after he lost a previous one, meaning he's a legal permanent resident. Let me highlight this part about losing his card because this is one of the ways that they can get you, right? So when I was watching a couple of videos that talked about like how green card residents can be deported, one way is by losing your green card, right? But it appears he took care of all that he made sure he got a replacement green card. So why would they detain this guy? And why did they treat him as such? I mean, this guy apparently had a very rough ordeal, and it makes me wonder if they treated him this way, how are they treating Mahmoud Khalil? How do we know, or how do we not know that Mahmoud Khalil is not being tortured? We don't know. We don't know what they're doing to Mahmoud Khalil. So these are things to think about. Like, listen to what happened to this guy. A week into his detention, Astrid Sr., Schmidt's mother, who lives in Lindenborough, New Hampshire, said the family was still seeking answers about why her son is being held. I'm feeling shaken up, Senior said, stressing to the point that her son was here legally. It's unbelievable what's happening now. This case involving the apprehension of a legal permanent resident with a few answers available is the latest instance of unusual immigration enforcement under the new Trump administration, which has pledged a hard line on immigration. Schmidt's case is part of a wave of reports involving people with green cards or visas being detained by immigration authorities after returning from trips out of the country. So may that be a warning to people as well. Again, he was already here, permanent resident, went back home to visit family, came back and got hit with all this madness. It goes on to say that news of his arrest comes after Rhode Island physician Dr. Rasha Alaway, who had traveled to Lebanon to see her parents, was prevented from re-entering the U.S. at Logan on Thursday, despite having a visa running through 2027. It also follows the recent arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, a graduate student and outspoken figure during the Gaza war protests last spring at Columbia University, who was arrested last weekend at the behest of the Trump administration. His detention has generated national headlines and protests from progressives. Schmidt faced misdemeanor drug and drinking charges years ago and was allegedly flagged by immigration authorities for failing to show up to court in 2022. While Alaway and Khalil do not appear to have criminal records in the country. Schmidt's family says that he has faced no new legal issues since he was granted a new green card, and that his failure to show up to court wasn't an issue during the renewal process. Schmidt's and Alaway's cases also differ from Khalil's because they were re-entering the country, which put them in a vulnerable position. This is according to immigration attorney Heather Yuntz. A visa is a request for entry, but does not guarantee it. And people entering on visas can be subject to additional screening. Someone with a green card can typically just present it and enter unless it's flagged for some sort of violation. It goes on to say you're more vulnerable when you're seeking to enter the United States than when you are in the United States. So here's another one, right? Because that's part of the reason why these, the way that Mahmoud Khalil was treated was such a shock to people, because he was here. He didn't leave and try to come back. He was already here, right? So keep that in mind. There's one more part of this that I want to show you as well, because the New York Times, I think they went into a little bit more detail about what happened to him, which is pretty bad. Let me see. Yeah, I got that one too. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Let me go ahead and bring up this one as well. Because again, I think some people were shocked by this because it was Germany, right? Like, he's German and people don't expect that, I guess, to happen with a German tourist. But let me bring in this part as well, because it's becoming a problem, right? So German tourists detained for weeks, then deported from the US. So listen to this. Here's more information. Detained for weeks and eventually deported. 2 German tourists trying to enter the U.S. were recently tangled in a system responding to Trump's push to sharply restrict entry and deport people en masse. Now, these are 2 other ones. These cases are Jessica Brosch and Lucas Seeloff. It says that she was held for 46 days and Lucas was held for 16 days. And accounts of their rough handling by immigration officers have grabbed headlines in Germany as a sign of what being caught on the wrong side of the White House immigration policy could mean for European travelers. So it says here that with these individuals, they were stopped separately at San Isidro border, crossing between San Diego and Tijuana. So they were being denied entry, and they were sent to a crowded detention center, according to their own accounts and those of their friends. Mr. Seeloff was denied a translator and had trouble understanding what was happening to him. Ms. Broch's friend said that she was kept in solitary confinement for 9 days. By their accounts, both were flown back to Germany without a clear understanding of why they were detained in the first place. So they put this woman in solitary confinement for 9 days. Solitary confinement, which I'm heavily against, in my opinion, is a form of torture. It's a psychological torture. Like, this is insane. Insane. This one also goes on to say, the family of a tourist from Britain, Becky Burke, 28, said that she has been held for more than 2 weeks in Washington state, similarly caught up in the system, but unsure why. ICE did not respond on Thursday to requests for comment on those particular cases. So it's not just Schmidt. This is what I'm trying to tell people. Other tourists as well are being hit with this. The detaining is very concerning. The solitary confinement is also very concerning. Now, those individuals were tourists, but Schmidt was a permanent resident. So we don't know. I mean, we just don't know, like, what is going on here? What caused this to happen? I know someone just said in the chat, they said no translator. Yeah, so that's another one, right? Like, if they don't have a translator, they don't really know what you're saying. So denying that, I don't even know if that's legal for them to deny that. Method said the U.S. is imploding. Yeah, it's just like, it's all over the place. Like, one law, and then it's always taken to the extreme. This is what I feel like, right? So I think these people are terrified. I don't know if they want to come back. You know, again, I mean, Schmidt lives here. He lives here in New Hampshire. He might be thinking about moving back to Germany for good. And I mean, honestly, you can't blame him. But this is kind of wild. This is kind of wild, right? So here, come down here. No, this isn't true. A1 and A2. All Germans don't speak English. I lived in Germany. All of them don't. But it's very concerning, guys, like, ladies and gentlemen. And I, for one, just think, I don't know. The solitary confinement really, really does concern me. Really does concern me. They went on to say here, here's one example, said, for the first time in my life, I'm in handcuffs. As they're walking me into a building, they're twisting my arms. Why am I being detained? Is this legal? Can you do this to a U.S. citizen? So here was another. It was just, oh boy. I think we're just starting to see, like, the thick of this. And I think that, I don't know, man. I don't know. Germany is shocking, though. Like, when I first heard the story, because like I said, because it was local, I was like, Germany? Really? So I don't know, you guys. In my opinion, I know they mentioned, oh, well, he had a failure to appear in court years ago, but then he reapplied and got a new green card. You would have thought that would have appeared in the system. So for me, when we talk about what's really happening, here's what really happened. What's happening is this is the crackdown on immigration. And I think that at first, some people thought, well, they're just going to go after people who are entering the country illegally or overstayed their visas. They're going to go after those people. And now we're starting to see that they're also going after people that are permanent residents. Some could be because of a free speech issue, which I heavily support free speech. And others could be just because they left the country, went back home to visit, and now they came back. I don't know, you guys. It's scary times. Scary times. Let's go to some of the comments here. Thank you, Courtney. What's sad is that the tactic with deportation isn't new. I remember stories of some green card holders being deported under Obama. So now this is coming more to light, right? Now we're starting to hear more about these things. This is interesting. Miss Kiwi said this might be a big problem for American tourists there. might be a big problem for American tourists. There might be a blowback from all these detainings. People might be going back home soon. That's something to think about. And Skylar says this is scary. Solitary confinement, SMH. Yeah, I don't know. But that's a good point that Miss Kiwi brings up. That's a good point. Because here's the thing. This country does make money from tourism. Just keep it real. And if word gets back to the international community that this is how people are being treated and they come here as tourists now, I don't know. That may make people feel less inclined to visit. And that would affect tourism as well, by the way, which would also have an impact on the economy. I don't know, guys. Crazy times. Crazy times. Sylvia Ross says this is only the beginning. Yeah. Yep. All right, guys, we have one more story for you, and I think I'm going to do a good job of getting us out by 7 on time. All right. JB said how many visitors we have that visit Disney World. This will affect their pockets. I'm telling you guys, there are a lot of internationals that visit the United States. So when you go to Disney World, when you come to Boston and go to Faneuil Hall, you may not realize how many people are tourists just like you, but they're international tourists. So just keep that in mind. Okay. We are going to our last stories, ladies and gentlemen. Go ahead and smash that like button if you haven't had a chance to do so. And that is about this damning story that was just revealed. Holy smackdown, fam. It appears that there is more information that has been released about the discussion that Joe Biden had with Kamala Harris when he handed over the ranks to her and said, you were going to run, I'm going to go ahead and step down, after he was, of course, pushed to do so by Democrat leadership. This leaked information shows something else that Joe Biden said to Kamala Harris, and that could explain why she responded the way that she did to this question from The View. Let's just go back for a reminder so you can remember how we got here.
I'm glad to be with you. As vice president, you've worked very closely with President Biden for almost 4 years. He was here on our show, and he said there wasn't a single thing that he did that you could not do. Mm-hmm. What do you think would be the biggest specific difference between your presidency and a Biden presidency?
Well, we're obviously two different people, and we have a lot of shared life experiences. For example, the way we feel about our family and our parents and so on. But we're also different people, and I will bring those sensibilities to how I lead. For example, I know we're going to talk today, but one of the issues that I'm very focused on is what we do around home health care.
Yes.
I have done a lot of work as it relates to, sadly, but violence against women and children. I care a lot about that. I love our small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me predominantly, but we had what we called a second mother who lived 2 houses down, who helped my mother raise us. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. And so the influence of a personal experience will have its impact on the presidency.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact. The work that we have done, for example, capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors is something I care deeply about allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices and bring the cost of prescription medication down for seniors, but my intention is to expand that for all Americans. The work we have done to invest in American industries, whether it be in terms of manufacturing and creating almost 800,000 new jobs around manufacturing. Those were all a shared priority.
Well, let's Kamala, and I'm calling you Kamala because.
Okay. We had to do a flashback there because I just wanted to remind you what Kamala Harris said. And remember what we said before, what her one job was, right? To differentiate herself from Biden, right? Separate herself from Joe Biden, because the inside polling was showing that if Biden would have stayed in that race, that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. So she had to make the case that she was not him and she was going to be different. And it was that question from Sunny Hostin on The View that showed people, she's just going to be another Biden. She's going to be Biden 2.0. And I think that response from Kamala Harris probably still haunts her till this day. But now we're finding out more information, because now leaked documents show why Kamala Harris gave the answer that she gave. Shout out to The Hill for this one. Exclusive: how no daylight from Biden crippled the Harris presidential campaign. There's a poll for this, guys. Make sure you answer that poll question. Trump and Kamala both understood the importance of being seen as the bigger change agent. For Trump, that meant continuing to promise an antidote to the Biden-Harris years. For Harris, there was more flexibility to define her brand of change. She could risk looking hypocritical by making clean breaks with Biden on policies she had supported as vice president, rejecting parts of their record to forge her own agenda. She could identify new issues to run on that avoided the pitfalls of turning her back on the Biden era. Or she could rely on voters to see her gender, her genes, and her lived experience, a middle-class upbringing, schools outside the Ivy League, and a career as a prosecutor as symbols of change. Biden and his loyalists took the first option off the table. The first option, was identifying new issues to run on that avoided the pitfalls of turning her back on the Biden era. Now we are getting more information about how Joe Biden prevented this from happening. But I'm not going to throw all of it on Biden. Some of this is on Kamala too. Because even when someone presents to you what they want you to do, you still have a choice. And I'll tell you what I mean by that, okay? When I was an undergrad, I remember this. We had like these coaches, right? Like it was optional freshman year to have like a coach, like a inspirational coach or whatever. And I remember during one of our meetings, I said, well, I didn't really have a choice. It was either study for my exam or like go to my sorority meeting, right? And this is back when I was still in the sorority, right? And my coach, my academic coach told me, but you did have a choice. You just told me what your options were: to study for your exam or to go to your sorority chapter meeting. You chose to go to the sorority chapter meeting, even though you haven't missed any meetings and you knew you had the exam. So you did have a choice. Blew my mind, okay? I was young. I was naive. I didn't know better. But what that taught me is that oftentimes when we think we don't have a choice, we actually do. Sometimes we don't make that choice because we don't want to make the decision. And so we'll say we just did not have a choice. And that's kind of what I'm getting from this article and this conversation that happened between Biden and Kamala Harris. And I'll tell you what this means. Let's go into this a little bit further. He would say publicly that Harris should do what she must to win. But privately, including in conversations with her, he repeated, where did I go? Oh, sorry. But privately, including in conversations with her, he repeated an admonition. Let there be no daylight between us. Let's highlight this. Let there be no daylight between us. No daylight was the phrase he had used as a vice presidential candidate in 2008, to bind Republican nominee John McCain to an unpopular president, George W. Bush. Almost everywhere she went, Harris walked among former Biden aides who sought to defend his presidency. Her campaign was run by a former White House deputy chief and staff, whom she had just empowered to box out her own confidants, and a phalanx of department heads who had served Biden until the previous month. So you see where they're going with this article? They're trying to show you all the obstacles that she faced to basically excuse her from doing what Biden said he wanted her to do. But just like I told you, what my academic coach told me, Kamala Harris still had a choice. Now, we're not going to wash Joe Biden's hands clean of this either. Biden is still messed up for saying what he said and being very selfish. And you'll see the selfishness in just a second. But at the end of the day, Kamala Harris was the one who was running. It was her campaign. It wasn't Joe Biden's campaign. And this was a moment where Kamala Harris was going to have to stand up for herself. What is the point of breaking glass ceilings? And that's what they said when Kamala became the first woman vice president. What is the point of breaking those glass ceilings if you're still being told what to do all the time? What is the point of breaking those glass ceilings if you can't stand up for yourself? Because at that point, you're just arm furniture. It goes on to say here, where'd we go? Almost everywhere. Oh, we did almost everywhere she went. Sorry. The day before Harris' first interview, a joint appearance with vice presidential nominee Tim Walz, she dived into the recurring question of whether and when she would let daylight shine between herself and Biden. Veteran Democratic communication strategist Stephanie Cutter launched into a proposed preamble a list of all the items that made Harris proud of her work with Biden. Wait, said Sean, who's a longtime Harris advisor who was regarded with suspicion by the Biden holdovers running the campaign. Let's not do this, he said. Let's not go down memory lane. That was the last time he was invited to media prep. Cutter, another Harris confidant, later joked, cut him out. Now, remember, Stephanie Cutter, if I remember correctly, she was one of the people that was a part of the Pod Save America interview when they were trying to explain what happened and how little time they had to get the campaign going and everything. She was a part of that interview. So I'm just trying to remind you of who people were. Now listen to this part. When Harris sat down with Walz and CNN's Dana Bash in August, Harris said she would name a Republican to serve in her cabinet. She also said that she no longer supported a ban on fracking. Her 2019 call to end the practice threatened to hurt her in Pennsylvania, even though she had adopted Biden's no ban policy as his vice presidential candidate in 2020. But the first portion of the 1-on-2 interview, the part more viewers were likely to watch, featured Harris reciting a laundry list of Biden's policies while she was sitting next to Walz in a chair that seemed to be placed her below him and heaping praise on Biden's record. Harris did not look like a candidate seeking the highest office of the land. The whole scene reinforced the criticism that the vice president was either incapable or afraid of answering tough questions on her own. That was something I mentioned as well. Now we'll get to this part right about here. For the rest of the campaign, her team required that she be provided a chair that met certain specifications: leg height no less than 15 inches, floor to top of seat height no less than 18.9 inches. Arms on chairs may not be very high. Arms must fall at natural height. Chairs must be firm. Do you see all the things that they're focusing on besides good policy? All these superficial elements, right? We jump down to this part here. Her rallies and convention speech had not answered the question of why she was running for president or how her vision for the country would deliver for voters, other than having been next in line. She was running out of major moments to explain a vision to a broad audience. Her September 10th debate with Trump would offer another opportunity, perhaps a chance before voters cast early ballots to establish the key part of her narrative. But the day of the debate, Biden called to give Harris an unusual kind of pep talk and another reminder about the loyalty he demanded. No longer able to defend his own record, he expected Harris to protect his legacy. So here's the selfishness of Joe Biden. Similar to selfishness of Obama, maybe not as far to that extent. Obama can be very egotistical. But it was all about how he would look. It was less about her winning and more about how it made him look. He was more concerned about his legacy than about stopping Donald Trump from winning the presidency again. This is why I told you these people aren't real. This is why I told you, like, this is all a game. They don't really care. They care more about their ego. They care more about their appearance. They care more about their reputation. They care more about their legacy than they really did about stopping Donald Trump. Even more so. It goes on to say here, whether she won or lost the election, he thought, she would only harm him by publicly distancing herself from him, especially during a debate that would be watched by millions of Americans. To the extent that she wanted to forge her own path, Biden had no interest in giving her room to do so. He needed just 3 words to convey how much all of that mattered to him. No daylight, kid, Biden said. So at this point, what had really happened was that Joe Biden cared less about stopping Donald Trump and trying to help Kamala win this election and more about his own legacy. But some of this falls on Kamala Harris as well, because regardless of what Joe Biden told you to do, when you got on that debate stage and that mic was in front of you, you had the opportunity to do what you wanted to do. I would have never listened to Joe Biden. There was a reason why they were moving him out and trying to put somebody else in. So I asked this question again for all the ladies in the chat. What is the point of breaking glass ceilings if you can't stand up for yourself and you're just going to do what the men are telling you to do anyway? What's the point? What's the point? If Kamala Harris couldn't say no to Joe Biden, who was no longer in the damn race, if she couldn't say no to him, what makes you think she was going to say no to corporate donors? What made you think she was going to say no to the military industrial complex? What makes you think she was going to say no arms to Israel? So what's the point of breaking the glass ceiling if you're still going to be taking orders from the dude? I don't get this at all. I really don't get it. If you can't stand up for yourself, what was the point of breaking the glass ceiling? You will see even now, the Democratic Party and the donor base, they feel like they owe this to Kamala Harris because she lost, and the way that she lost, because she lost the popular vote. They feel as though they have to make it up to her. So now Kamala Harris is supposed to be running for governor of California. And because they feel that they owe her something because of the way that things played out, now there seems to be this sentiment that when she gets in the race, other Democrats are supposed to move out the damn way. And you'll see what I mean right here from this clip from Case Study QB. where Katie Porter makes this kind of clear. Listen to this. This is what's happening, folks.
There are rumors that the vice president may get in the race later. I saw some reporting that you said that the vice president might clear the field, and I was surprised to see that one of your advisors apparently told CNN that you wouldn't run against Kamala. Is that true?
Well, so listen, what I've said and what I'm going to say again today is that I think if Kamala comes into this race, especially if she comes in tomorrow, she comes in now, it's going to have a near field clearing effect. It's just going to be, well, I'm not sure who all, there's a big field of people.
Yeah,
Some of them have said they're staying in no matter what.
Right.
So I think it's going to shake up the field. I said it's going to have a sort of a seismic effect. That said, we got to start this process now. Kamala's going to make her decision in her own time. The vice president is owed that. That's her decision to make. And I've worked with her. I know that she's a careful decision maker. She's a thinker. And so she's going to make her decision. But in the meantime, it is full speed ahead. Voters, I'm not waiting around. And I don't think voters are waiting around. Well, they want to know how we're going to lead. They want to make plans for what we're going to do with regard to Trump. And so I think there's a hunger for people to lead in this moment. And I'm stepping up.
But see, I'm like, honestly, like what I expect from, as someone who admires and respects you as a leader and a political figure, I'm surprised you're not saying, I don't care what Kamala Harris does, I will be the best governor. Like, that's what's confusing to me. Like, isn't the person that's supposed to lead this big fractious state the person who says Kamala can get in, who I don't give a fuck, if she gets in, I'll beat her?
Well, I'm not sure that our leaders, people want to hear our leaders say it.
Well, the way that you would say it, I have to find the right district for my vibe, but.
I do think, look, I am not waiting for Kamala Harris. And I don't think anyone should who wants to lead. I think what it means to lead is to literally step forward, right? To be willing to be at the tip of the spear in this moment. That's exactly why I'm launching. That's why I've been working on this. I am not sitting back waiting to see what Kamala does. I am not considering other races, hedging my bet. I'm going to be California's next governor. But it would also be, I think, disrespectful to somebody who went toe-to-toe month after month after month in a grueling race against Donald Trump and I saw this firsthand, personally, serve California very, very ably as our attorney general, not to acknowledge that this is somebody who would be an incredibly strong candidate, and there are practical realities that anyone faces.
But you think...
All of them have already received marching orders because they believe that they have to give something to Kamala because she lost the presidential election. So they got to give her something. So they've already got, Katie Porter already received the marching orders from the Democratic Party, from Dem leadership. When Kamala Harris announces that she's running for governor in this race, you need to step aside. Katie Porter is sitting there telling you that she's forging on until Kamala Harris announces, and then she's stepping aside. It has already been decided. They've already decided this, ladies and gentlemen. This is exactly what I was talking about. So because she lost in the way that she lost, they're still trying to make Kamala happen. They're still trying to make her a thing. They still want her to break more glass ceilings, even though she'll be told what to do by some man over in the corner. They feel like they owe this to Kamala Harris. What is the point of walking around saying girl power, black girl magic, women this, women that, breaking glass ceilings? And the moment someone tells you no daylight between us, don't separate us, you better stand up for me and what I did and da-da-da, you just nod and go right along with it. Why would you trust that person as a politician? Why would you even trust them as a governor? All these things that are coming out now, and to keep it real, if Kamala Harris would have won, you would have never heard about the things you're hearing about now. Tim Walz is out there doing town halls, going across the country, telling people, giving people the business and telling them what happened. Tim Walz is going across the country telling people, this is what I really wanted to say. For all the women that are watching, especially younger women, Jesus Christ, younger women, this is why you can't just fall for the symbolism. You can't fall for she's breaking glass ceilings. Oh my God, we got a woman and a woman of color. Because oftentimes what I've seen when people get those positions, guess what? They ain't making no damn decisions. Think about that. But what I really want you to take away from this conversation is that Joe Biden didn't care about beating Donald Trump. He cared about his legacy. Let's go to the comments here in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the super sticker, Infallible King Books. Thank you. Bridget, Sonny did not help her. No, she did not. Clara, thank you from Ireland. Always, though, to you, Sabby, Gray Zone, and Chris Hedges. You are truth tellers, and we are grateful. Thank you. And what's up to the international community? Thank you, Marlon. The tank is empty. Right? Thanks. Let's discuss some things. We are new to this. This duopoly ain't for us. Thank you, that one. Thank you, Trash Panda. Dems eat their own. Thank you, Fully Latin Swallow. Definitely word salad topped with a generous helping of BS dressing. Thank you, Marlon. Can't blame Joe Biden because the tank is disconnected. Thank you, Miss Richie. If Kamala can't stand up to a demented old man, she doesn't stand a chance standing up to world leaders. It makes her look very bad and weak to blame him. It's a good point. And thank you, Roger. One big non-answer. There you go. There was a poll about this. Let's see that poll. I'm curious what you guys thought. Do you think that Biden sabotaged Kamala? 50% of you said yes, he didn't want to drop out. 9% said no, of course not. 26% said it is possible. 16% said I have no idea. And that is 1,991 votes. Interesting. All right, guys, that is it for me today. I hope you have a great Sunday evening. Oh, thank you, Courtney. Joe did all that and ended up being the worst president anyway. Yep. All right, guys, that's it for me tonight. I hope you have a great evening, the rest of your weekend. And I will see you guys live Tuesday evening. Green Party candidate that is running for governor of Maryland is going to be here. So don't miss that. And we'll also have news stories. All righty. Have a good night. Keep up the fight. Yeah.